It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it's been hot labor summer and fall shaping up to bring, well, much of the same kind of stuff as workers have been hitting the streets. President Biden walking a picket line and, walking the walk, talking the talk. You look at the regulatory reforms coming out of the NLRB, attempting to undo decades of bad corporate decisions. I got to tell you, things are starting to head in the right direction, but we need more. We need more. We need comprehensive labor law reform, and we need to return to the original intent of the NLRA, but update it for today's workforce. But I got to tell you, today, a historic day, and that's why I have asked Val Hoyle to come talk with us. Val is a congresswoman out of the 4th Congressional District in Oregon, former Oregon labor commissioner, and someone who is just on the right side of every one of these issues. Val, thanks for taking time for us.
Well, thank you for asking me. I really appreciate it. And I think, as we were saying earlier, when you elect people from labor to positions of power, then you get a voice for working people. But I have to say, in terms of what President Biden has been doing, he is the most pro-union president since Roosevelt, yep. Right? Like, we are seeing, he is leaning in on making sure, whether it's project labor agreements or, appointing pro-worker people to the NLRA, right? And we saw Marty Walsh, who was a former union president, heading up, was Secretary of Labor. I mean, he is walking the walk, although I don't think he gets credit for it because misinformation has gone out there, and the people who are in charge know that if we're fighting each other, then we're not going to be fighting who we should be fighting, which is for workers.
Well, it's the quote attributed to Jay Gould. I can easily pay half the working class to murder the other half. And what's going on right now is they're not even really paying for it because they've built it over the last 40 years of dominating talk radio, of taking over media and inundating working people with divisive messages. And here's your daily outrage candy. They are fabulous at that.
Well, I also think, and, we have to hold the Democratic Party accountable. The Democratic Party who, it comes down to, when I talk to labor, and again, I'm a third generation union member. My grandfather immigrated here. He was a laborer, joined the newly formed laborers union. My dad was a firefighter, president of the union, and I was a member of the hotel employee and restaurant union. It's Unite here now. It used to be here. But when you get union members and pro-labor people into office, they make it uncomfortable for you. They're like, well, you're not supposed to say those things. Or I hear Democrats say, well, we used to need unions, but we don't need them anymore. It comes down to wages, hours, working conditions, pensions, and collective bargaining rights, And for union members, that's what we should be voting on. But Democrats are taking labor for granted and have for a while. And labor walked away. So now I think we have a really good opportunity, and workers are sick of it. They see CEOs, pay rising, and they're not keeping up. And so workers are fighting back. But we have to deal with the anti-union right to work laws. We have to deal with, whether it's one of my bills is for FedEx, they should have to organize under the National Labor Relations Act, as opposed to the Railway Labor Act, which means that to organize FedEx, you have to organize every single location, unlike UPS, where you actually have collective bargaining, and they got a good contract. So we have a big fight, and again, it means more pro labor and more union members that are in office.
No, absolutely. I'm right there with you. I say it all the time. We need working people in the halls of power if working people issues are ever going to be addressed. But to your point about, the kind of jobs that are out there and them being union jobs, even snobby economists like Paul Krugman, I don't know if you saw his column over the weekend, said that, look, those manufacturing jobs that we want back, those were only good jobs when they became union jobs. And you could say that about industry after industry. Manufacturing back in the day was grueling, was long hours, low pay, deadly work. And it was unions who brought that into family sustaining jobs, good benefits, retirement security, the kind of stuff that we take for granted today.
Well, yeah, my grandmother and her siblings worked in a shoe factory when they were young, teenagers, children, right? We don't do that anymore, but we're seeing it again, right? Because we took our eye off the ball. And, the bottom line is, I had the incredible opportunity to meet Shawn Fain, the new president of the UAW. And the reason that we have seen union members vote differently than sort of the same old is they want someone that's going to fight for them. And Shawn Fain has just said, look, these new electric car plants, they aren't paying a living wage, right? And yet, like, I own a union-made car. I paid more. I saved up because I'm going to, I look at the UAW website. But the bottom line is, I do that because I want to buy something where someone gets a decent wage and a pension and good working conditions. And what do we got? So I'm really, whether it was the Teamsters with UPS or what's happening with the UAW, and as you know, the president is going out to walk the picket line, but he's putting his money where his mouth is. Now, we also know former President Trump is going to walk that picket line. Josh Hawley, senator from Missouri, is going to walk that picket line. These men have done more to undermine labor, whether it was Supreme Court appointments for anti-union people, anti-worker people, or just outright supporting, right to work laws or, being union busters. And yet they think they can go onto a picket line and that workers are going to think that they're one of them. And that's just wrong.
No, and the thing is look, I want Josh Hawley on that picket line. I want him standing there so people can go, hey, what have you done for us here? Because I say all the time, Republicans hate working people. Look at what they do. Don't pay attention to what they say. Look at what they've done. And make him defend what his party has done for the last 40, 50, 60 years. Make him defend what he has personally done by putting people on the Supreme Court that made this country a no rights at work country for public sector workers and want that to filter down into the private sector. Make them defend that. And we don't do enough of that, I don't think.
No, I think you're right. And I got up and spoke on the floor in support of the UAW workers and that strike. And I'm proud. And today, Representative Haley Stevens, really great champion for labor in the UAW. I'm an original co-sponsor of the bill called the UAW Job Protection Act, which would ensure that contracts to build or assemble motor vehicles for the federal government stipulate the exact plants where the motor vehicles will be assembled. So we know that we can put into that equation, are the workers getting paid? Is there wage theft? Do they have a pension? Do they have safe, workplaces? And the bottom line is, if we're going to spend taxpayer dollars, then I want to make sure we're spending our taxpayer dollars on the highest quality workforce and the highest quality product.
See, for me, this is important. It's something I've talked about for years. The idea when we use tax dollars to get whatever we need, whether it's roads or bridges or education or healthcare or manufacturing plants, that the jobs that come out of it aren't race to the bottom, poverty wage, desperation jobs, but actually high road, family sustaining wage jobs to use our public investments to lift us up as opposed to tearing us down. This is the kind of stuff Democrats should be running on. This is the kind of stuff that they should be pushing at every opportunity.
It's a no-brainer. It's like project labor agreements or having the high standards in apprenticeship that the building trades and the carpenters union, the building and construction trades have leaned in on. You can say, well, union, non-union, you can't dictate what we should choose for federal dollars. But if you have a prevailing wage, right, which is the union negotiated wage, then people aren't negotiating on price. So you're not going to be able to take the lowest bidder. But also, I think that we should put other standards. For instance, do they have apprenticeship programs, right? What do they have? Do they have wage theft? Are they a credible employer? What is their safety record? But what I have seen over and over again is there really is a difference between union and non-union, right? Especially in expanding apprenticeship and training the next generation of workers.
No, I mean, and this is a president who's doing this. I mean, the fact that he's walking the picket line, the fact that, I'm guessing he borrowed Obama's comfortable shoes, because Obama told me he had comfortable shoes. He was going to be walking those picket lines. I didn't see him in Wisconsin when I was sleeping on the marble floor when the uprising was going on in 2011. I didn't see him on any picket lines. This guy, who the right loves to frame as Sleepy Joe or lazy or whatever it is, there he is out there doing the work, and that's what I love about Jelly Bucket Joe.
Well, that's right. And what we need to do is tell those stories. I have to say, so I was at a city council, well, I was watching a city council meeting last night in Salem, Oregon, just north of me, where the city council, they determined, and the mayor, that they would appeal. There was a firefighter who had a throat cancer that is common in firefighters. Basically, firefighters have much higher rates of cancer than any other. It is cancer causing.
Right, they're inhaling horrible burning stuff. Yeah.
That's right, toxic fume. So he died about 4 years ago. And so they said they wouldn't cover it, even though, when I worked on and supported the cancer presumption bill, but they're self-insured. They didn't cover it. The appeals court said they needed to cover it. They waited 2 years until the last day they could appeal it to the Supreme Court, while his wife was in Colorado seeing his name newly put on the firefighters memorial in Colorado. And they decided 2 years dragging it out to appeal, putting this widow through that much more. Well, last night, and I watched the testimony, I called the mayor and I told him why this mattered and I hoped he would reconsider. I sent a letter to put on the record that, it's not okay, but 350 firefighters showed up and their families showed up, where firefighter and family members of firefighters talked about their experience and how offensive it was that people who protect and serve us run into burning buildings, that we would drag them through and not support them make them beg when they're sick and dying. Well, the city council did overturn that decision last night, and we were happy, but it shouldn't have taken that long. And his wife this morning, Tina, she said, I had to watch the hearing again because I've been fighting this fight for so long, watching her husband die of a very bad cancer. And I just didn't believe that it truly happened. But that's the power of a union. That's the power of a union. And we need to make sure that every Democrat is supporting the PRO Act, that we're talking to working people about supporting them. Again, wages, hours, working conditions, pensions, and collective bargaining rights. I don't care what party you're in. If you're not for that, then you're not for labor.
Yeah, no, this is one of those things I say all the time that, Democrats need to adopt a striker. And I've been saying this for the last 2 years. Get out on these picket lines, walk a day with these people, hear their stories, hear their concerns, and take those back into the halls of power. But to this firefighter story, the sad reality, this is too common. And I asked the question, the same thing with our military. I asked the question, if this is how we treat our heroes, who are going to be the next generation of heroes? Because who are going to be those people who are going to step up in the moment of need, knowing that this is their future?
Well, and that's right. So on 9/11, you will see, every single Republican, every single elected official talk about remembering our heroes. But then when they were out dying, Jon Stewart put together an amazing group, but he really, really fought to come to the halls of power and say, in Congress, you put all these 9/11 things up, but yet you will not take care of these women, these men and women, as they're dying of cancer. They're dying of cancer because they were exposed to carcinogens. So we won that fight last night. It was a fight that we shouldn't have had to have. And I was proud to stand with the firefighters, but I'll tell you what, I'll send you that video. And we have a firefighter who is a state representative, and her husband, who was also a firefighter, had this same kind of cancer. And she talked about the experience of watching her husband go through that and having to fight to get basic insurance coverage, right? And presumption. So we shouldn't have to fight this fight. And that means getting pro-labor people into office wherever, every single place, from the school board all the way up to the presidency. And I, for one, am incredibly happy with the work that Joe Biden has done to unashamedly support working people.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show with Congresswoman Val Hoyle. She represents the 4th Congressional District in Oregon. Hoyle.house.gov, the website. Last line of questioning I've got for you. You know, we're still operating in 1930s and horrible 1947 labor law. This is 2023. You know, we need to get things done. Look, I remember the Carter era. They were going to undo Taft-Hartley. Didn't happen. I remember Clinton was running on, we're going to get strike replacement pushed through. That didn't happen. I shook Obama's hand twice, said we were getting something better than EFCA, got nothing. You've got the PRO Act that we're talking about. You've got the Raise the Wage Act. You've got paycheck fairness. We've got all this legislation. We need to get some things moving. What does this come down to?
So here's the deal. The labor laws were made, designed, put forward, voted on when, my grandmother and her siblings were working in a shoe factory, and it wasn't a safe one. When my grandfather was building bridges without nets because they just knew that they would lose one man per $1 million spent, and that was an acceptable loss. So we have not updated our labor laws for what work is like now, right? So for for people working at home, for people who are independent contractors, right? For the gig economy, we have not moved forward to protect workers. And I do have to say, I personally didn't think Obama did some great things and expanded healthcare, but he was not a pro-union president. So we need to get more people, not just Democrats, although I support Democrats, and without us in power, we will never do any of the things you want to do. But we need to get Democrats who will unabashedly speak up for and stand up for workers. And, workers are standing up for themselves. And I've been on more picket lines than I can count. And I can tell you there is not a greater feeling, even when you're fighting a hard fight, to know that you're with a group of people that together, you can make a difference. And just look at the contract that the Teamsters got. And I anticipate that the UAW will get too.
Yeah, as well. I've been saying for a while, if we're going to reunite this country, it's under the guise of reunionizing the workplaces and getting people back to earning the wages, hours, conditions that my grandparents fought for. But Val, I appreciate you taking some time for us. Keep up the great work. I hope you'll come back and talk to us again real soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much, Congresswoman Val Hoyle. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Gonna take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
From the steel mills of Pennsylvania to the auto factories of Michigan to the modern makers movement, manufacturing makes our nation great. I'm Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. We bring business and labor together to advocate for policies that everyone can agree on. Together, we can strengthen manufacturing and create good-paying American jobs. Help us keep it made in America.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
The old factory towns in America's heartland have been taking a beating. Thing is, though, there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
The new CHIPS bill that got passed will bring jobs back home and has already resulted in big announcements of major new factories opening. The American Recovery Package has allowed cities and counties to hire new police officers and firefighters and start rebuilding their communities again.
We're finally turning things around after 40 years of screwing over working people. But will we keep moving in the right direction? That's our choice.
It doesn't matter what kind of weather. It doesn't matter what time of day or night. When Mother Nature's done her worst, the only thing that matters to us is keeping the lights on for you. The hardworking women and men of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, dedicated to keeping the power on in communities all across the country. Because when bad weather strikes, we know what matters most. IBEW, the power professionals.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Hard to believe it's been 46 years since Fonzie jumped the shark. I actually remember that on TV. And look, I loved his quip, Henry Winkler's quip of he's the only person in Hollywood to jump the shark twice. Because as anyone knows, that has now become the phrase where you've kind of gone off the rails. Or you've literally jumped the shark, but yeah, it's one of those weird moments that I'm still trying to. Wow, yeah, I got to tell you, as I was listening to Val Hoyle tell the story about the fireman, it's incredible when you hear these kind of stories of people that we've put up on pedestals, that we've given the title hero to, the people that we look to in times of trouble, and what we do to them when they get into trouble. And I've always asked this question, from the time I was a little kid, when I saw the men coming home from Vietnam being dumped into our housing project with broken minds, broken bodies, horrible drug and alcohol problems, and no help. We were back in Cleveland over the weekend as we were coming back from Michigan, and we drove by the place where I grew up. I had my son with me, and we were in the neighborhood, and I wanted to see what the old neighborhood looked like. And it's one of those things where memories just come flashing back, and most of them not great. And my son's like, did anything good happen to you? Because I said, hey, that's where the neighbor got into a fight, and the wife slammed the door on his hand, and he cut his hand, and she kept going back and forth, opening and closing it, and just shredding his arm. And that's where one of the first times I ever saw blood. We went over by another place. I said, I saw someone shot over there, and right next to our house, I said, oh, they took those bushes out of there. I said, there were these giant bushes over there. And that's where we found the guy with the big, heavy army green coat, dead with a needle in his arm. And, and I remember these stories of people who were struggling. And, a lot of them were the people that we put up on a pedestal. Well, not back then. It's the people that we would have put on a pedestal today. And we didn't help them. And that's why I just have so many problems with what's going on in our society. I saw somebody with one of the I don't remember the country guy's name who sang the small town song. We take care of our own in a small town, kind of jingoism. And I said, really? Really? And the answer is no. We have a government that is broken because of this massive divide between rural and urban, black and white, male and female, gay and straight, whatever division you want to throw in there. They've done a really incredible job of getting us to not focus on what is truly outrageous, which is a firefighter getting cancer from breathing in the toxic fumes from fires over decades and not taking care of them. From the 9/11 responders who showed up selflessly to look for survivors and ended up getting themselves, whatever diseases came out of that, of burning asbestos and diesel fuel and all the horrible that was there. And it took years, 16 years to get the bill that was necessary. Because we're still focused on all this dumb stuff. And we've got people in Congress, and I look at my congressman, Scott Perry, as someone who doesn't want to actually get anything done. It's about his pound of flesh. It's about his ideology more than taking care of people and doing the things that we need to get done as citizens of this country. That's what we should be angry about. That the wealthy get what they want. Corporate America, the billionaires, Donald Trump, they get what they want. He was honest about that. But we, the working people, look what they're doing to these UAW members. Look at the messaging out of that. Frightening. Right back after this.
I've been driving buses for 5 years, and my day-to-day routine is I wake up a little earlier than most people. I get on a bus, I go out, I pick up some students and make sure they get to school nice and safe. Here in Fairbanks, Alaska, that can be a challenge because of the winter weather and the icy roads. But I love the job. So the Teamsters are great. They provide us a lot of protections. They've always taken care of their people, made sure that our jobs were secure. We didn't have to worry about whether or not we'd have a job from day to day.
And that's amazing because before we'd be working 4, 6, 8 hours a day and only earning minimum wage was real difficult to make a living. And then the Teamsters pushed the law so we make something we can live off of and not have to have a second job. What absolutely gives me peace of mind, the union membership allows me to focus on this job without having to worry about whether or not my family is going to be taken care of. I'm Andrew Case, and I'm proud to be Teamsters Local 959.
Before we close the program, we want to take a moment to thank our viewers and to share a little bit about why we do what we do. At the Rick Smith Show, we believe that media today is almost entirely controlled by corporate greed. So we have now 24-hour news channels. But instead of 24 hours of news, what we get is 1 hour repeated 24 times, and with tons of commercials creating obscene amounts of profits. Information once presented as a public service has now become a private commodity. So when lies make money, lies are what we get. We get a corporate-controlled rage machine feeding us anger and hate, trying to convince us that our problems are right-left or red-blue, when they are and always have been up-down, the wealthiest 1% versus the rest of us. Our goal is to be an alternative to that machine, not as a news show with a fancy journalist out front, but as a talk show run by a union truck driver and a team of working-class heroes just like you. Everything we do, both what we get right and what we get wrong, is dedicated to advancing the interests of America's working families. No corporate ad buys, no think tanks, no focus groups, no talking points. We are media by working people, for working people. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.